Hey everyone, welcome to episode 70 of the Miami Tech Pod. I'm Caesar, and I'm joined by Maria and Brian this week, and our special guest, Ramon Berrios. Ramon, welcome to the Miami Tech Pod.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Excited to jam.
Definitely, man. So you are the founder and CEO of Trend. You recently moved yourself and the company to Miami. Why don't you give the listeners a little bit about background about Trend and what you all are building? Disclaimer: I'm a very small investor here, but I'm really happy to see you fulfilling this reality here.
Yeah, for sure. As you mentioned, recently moved out to Miami from Austin. Originally born and raised in Puerto Rico, so just now a little bit closer to home. Company was started in Austin. We then operated in Denver for about a year, and in Miami just has become home, and we'll stay home. So a little bit of background on Trend for context. What we do at Trend is we help brands generate content by real people in real settings, content that is authentic and relatable. And we do this through a marketplace where we connect them with pretty much anyone with a smartphone. So we believe that anyone with a smartphone has all the creative tools that they need in their pockets to generate content for brands. And so what this does is that for small businesses is it democratizes access to high quality creative. For enterprise, it helps them scale the creative operations. And then on the creative side, yeah, I mean, we help anyone make money and create an entirely new revenue stream by doing monetizing by generating content when they do the things that they love to do. So they don't have to be an influencer. Ultimately we wish to just, anyone, even an Uber driver, could be taught to do product photography from their apartment. So that's what we do. We generated over 100,000 pieces of content last year. We work with over 1,000 paying customers, anywhere from SMBs to companies like Amazon. But yeah, that's what we're here to do.
So just to break down the mechanics of this, right? Uh, Someone in a marketing team who's running a campaign at a company says, "All right, this is our strategy. We're going to have a blend of digital, out of home, TV, and a piece of this campaign's budget is going to be for influencer marketing." Where do we get that talent? We're going to go to trend.io and find a bunch of people that fit, the or have audiences that have the demographic that we're looking for. And we're going to hire them to be a part of that campaign. Is that how to think about it?
No, so the main difference is that they don't necessarily have to tap into the audiences of these creators. They're more so getting the content that these creators make with licensing and distribution rights, and then amplifying it or pushing it wherever they want with full licensing and distribution rights. So, we just believe that a brand has more control of the output of a marketing campaign if they have really high quality content. And definition of high quality changes depending on what the goal of the campaign is. Could be UGC, could be product photography, but it's not just having an influencer push it to their audience. It's getting that content and pushing it in channels where it just blends into the platform, and it's guaranteed to have better conversions, better engagement, better brand building, better storytelling, etc.
So give us some examples of creators on the platform that you want to highlight here.
Yeah, I mean, just as an example on the brand side is, we had Italic, which is a direct-to-consumer company. They had to generate content in 12 different kitchens. And so with a creative studio, that would take a lot of time sourcing the home, sending the creative studio to each one of the homes. And then the creators applied through Trend to the campaign. They generated content in 12 different kitchens in under 2 weeks, for a fraction of the cost, for say $1,500. So on the creator side, who delivered that content? It could be a photographer without a social media following. It could be somebody that just knows how to do product photography from their phone, or UGC, who might not have a social media following. Or it could be someone that does have a following, say 20,000 followers, 10,000 followers. And so besides posting, they want to be on trend to also monetize content, because posting, influencer marketing is limited real estate at the end of the day in a feed. So with content, creators can just churn out a lot of content for different brands and continue to make money and not have to worry about, is this brand aligned? Is this, am I get posting too much about that stuff? So it really varies. Ultimately, the main theme is that your following size count doesn't matter.
So Ramon, I'm kind of curious. So you're basically acting like a brokerage house almost for like for creating of the content, but also distribution, right? So
Just mainly creating. Yeah.
okay. Because I was curious, because there's a handful of other players that are doing distribution focused marketplaces
Totally.
for influencers and stuff, right? And I was always curious, like, how do they actually accurately measure the impact of our influence levels? Because like my wife, her sister, I would say is a influencer of one, because whatever she buys, my wife buys right after, and like, how do you measure that, even though it's a super 100% effective influencer rate,
Right.
know?
Yeah, I mean, I come from the space. I come from the influencer space. It is a very uphill battle to have to measure the effectiveness of all of this, in terms of the distribution side. That's why, we come from that space. I come from the influencer marketing space, and we've slowly just been removing ourselves from that into the content category, just because from to scale the business with that angle, like, yes, it's a short-term reward business to build, but over the long term, it's incredibly difficult to scale, because you pretty much have no control over the output of an influencer marketing campaign as, say, a broker or a software provider. There has to be alignment between the brand and the creator. You don't have control over that unless you're an agency, because if you're a software provider and you have a database, the brand has total control over who they're going to choose. And so, say a toilet paper company chooses Kendall Jenner for their campaign or whatever, like, you just have no control. There might not be any alignment or anything like that. So plus, on top of that, the attribution information is third-party data. Like, you don't own that data, and so you're at the mercy of Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all these platforms. So constantly have to building for them, not for your business or your customers. And so with the content angle, the opportunity we see is like, look, everyone is using tools like Canva, Adobe Lightroom. These creators are, they're making their own content. They're going viral. They're editing their own TikTok videos. They're editing their own YouTube videos. Where is the liquidity for these content creations that they're making? You make all of this content in Canva, but who are you going to sell it to? So at the end of the day, that's what we want to do, the brokerage that does find the liquidity and the customers for them.
So you mentioned kind of you came from the influencer space. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey before launching Trend and kind of what led you, some of the experiences that you had?
Yeah, for sure. I built a business when I was back in Puerto Rico that was sort of in the early Instagram days, an Instagram bot that just allowed automation for accounts. And I did a licensing deal with a company and grew a SaaS business that eventually got a cease and desist from Facebook. So
there you go.
that's why I know.
I mean, that's like a rite
Let's
of
get
passage,
to the interesting
right?
part.
Are you really like building something disruptive if you don't get a cease and desist from somebody, right?
That was not on the vision board when building out the business. But
did you respond with the letter like, "Dear Beta, I moved fast and broke things. I'm sorry."
Right. Yeah, given some of their own medicine. But yeah, no, I mean, the business grew pretty fast, ranked number 1 on Google for Instagram marketing service, Instagram growth service. And I did over 10,000 customer support tickets myself in that business. It was a team of 1. And I just learned a lot through that business. But because it was a lifestyle profitable SaaS business, what I did on my free time was I would surf here in Puerto Rico. I would take my GoPro.
Like surf, like actual surfing?
Yeah,
No.
actual surfing. Yeah.
you gotta, we're not talking browsers here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I would go out with my GoPro and I would start recording, and I started posting that on social media. And then Four Seasons and W Hotels started reaching out like, hey, we want more content like this. And to me, that was my favorite money earned, because I was getting paid for surfing. Like, that was the only thing I did outside of working on my free time. And I just obsessed over that, where it was like, well, I'm getting paid for doing something I was already going to do anyways. I'm very passionate about this, and I am getting paid, and I am not a pro. I'm sure that people that do pottery can get paid for shooting content when doing pottery. I'm sure that people that love to cook can get paid while cooking, and food recipes and food products. And it's just got nothing to do with your following size. So there was a shift there where, how about somebody that does Uber, instead of driving around all day and sacrificing time, they could instead monetize the things they were already going to do and love doing. People that love going to the beach, love going hiking. So many products need content in these kind of different environments, and content studios just can't deliver that. So yeah.
And it's so smart for the brands, because the cost structure is a lot. I mean, you don't have to hire production and light and, union workers and all of the stuff where, someone else is doing the creating for you, and you're just like monetizing them. And the marketplace varies tremendously in price. So it actually allows for, like earlier stage companies who don't have the budget of a Pepsi to go in and build like really great content that converts without necessarily like, hiring an entire production studio.
Yeah, I mean, in production studios, like, if they shoot all of that content, they send it to the client, and the client doesn't like one thing, they have to go back and stage everything up again just to make those revisions. It's just incredibly expensive operation, and just not cost efficient for companies. So, I think we do have that flexibility. I think as well, one thing we do differently that any other platform doesn't do is that Trend has fixed rates for the creators. So all rates are pre-negotiated. That's one of the challenges brands encounter when they go out, because a brand might say, all right, well, I'll just go out and DM creators and just run this operation myself with spreadsheets. But 90% of the time of running that operation is spent negotiating back and forth with creators. And this is not something that is, I guess industry, like there's no book really for rules for having rates for content. So the creators just toss numbers all over the board, across the board. And, they bake in their audience size. And no, you shouldn't be baking your audience size if it's just the content. So by having a marketplace, you sort of have leverage because you have the liquidity. So you can sort of standardize these rates and systems.
Cool. And you just raised a round, right? You made a little bit of news here that you raised $3 million for a seed round. Is that right?
Yeah. We actually finished that round in November. We just hadn't announced it until we did a rebrand. We had a classic founder designed brand previously. And so just as we, as you go through the fundraising process, you yourself learn the story better and better and better. And so by the end of the fundraising, the story was so clear to us and the vision that the website, when we looked at it, and the brand, it didn't really match like sort of our evolution. So shout out to actually Amber from Miami, from Wheelhouse, who helped us build out the website. But yeah, we raced that November with Flybridge. We also were one of the award winners of Pharrell's program. We had Techstars on that round, Techstars Ventures, founders of Twitch, Kabam, Crunchyroll, just a great group of founders and people from Miami as well, including Caesar.
Well, Flamingo Capital. That's how I got in. So shout out Flamingo Capital.
Part of the purpose of this pod is to pump Caesar's bags. So we have a weekly roundup in our WhatsApp group of what is Caesar investing in this week, so that we can do an update the following week on why everyone else needs to double down on that.
Hey,
got to do what you got to do.
What's the point?
We respect the hustle. Use everything at your disposal. Yeah.
I have no comment. So how big's the team, man?
We just hired our ninth team member. So, which actually now over half of the team, yeah, like four or five out of the nine have been sourced recently in Miami, including our lead engineer, which I really thought, well, it was a challenge. At a certain point, I thought we might have to expand, even though I really want to do this. We might have to expand the geography to be able to hire for this role, but we actually were able to source that engineer there. Now sort of our director of marketing operations was also sourced down there, and we just signed a little lease in the Miami Beach office. So yeah.
Can you give any advice to kind of founders who are building here? What is, you mentioned you struggled a little bit to kind of find that engineer, but any tips that you can give to someone else locally building their business?
Yeah, so when you mean building their business, you mean recruiting, fundraising,
All of it.
or all of it?
Anything that comes to mind.
Okay. I think for recruiting, for recruiting, what worked for me is I was always asking whoever I possibly knew for any kind of introduction, even if the conversation had nothing to do with business or anything like that. It's like, hey, by the way, if you by any chance come across person that X is looking for XYZ, just send them my way. And I would only say that to people in the tech community, and then eventually I just expanded that to pretty much almost anyone I talked with or met, even if they weren't in the tech community. And that wasn't getting me many results. But then I started saying, hey, I'll just pay you $5,000 if you just refer a person this way. And turns out, money gets people moving. So then I just started getting sort of more leads and more leads. And some of them came through, referrals of people like that. And then others, recruitment agencies, LinkedIn, DMing, literally just exhausting every possible option. I tried recruitment agencies without getting involved, and it's just not enough volume in the pipeline. So just exhaust every option because you just need volume at the end of the day. Otherwise, the process is just way too slow. And then in terms of fundraising, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I had absolutely no network. So for me, it was a uphill battle. However, given my previous business and bootstrapping businesses, and given the fact that I had no network, I was just forced to have the business numbers, I guess, talk for themselves, and just make as much revenue as possible. To me, initially, racing was so far-fetched that it was a lower hanging fruit to just focus on customers and keep growing the business. So that's what we did. And, when you reach out to people with good numbers, like it gets people's attention, but invest in building a network really, as much as I would, even like having amazing numbers, etc. Just reaching out to people cold is just not as effective as getting an introduction through someone. And so it just takes time. It's the answer most people don't want to hear, but you have to do it all. Like, it's not like, which should I focus on? Should I focus on this or that? Like, you really just have to do it all. And, for us, I think for me, my podcast was a huge, it opened a lot of doors. It sucked like doing it after hours, after work, like after a day full of calls with investors, having to hop on a podcast and record that. But now it's been 2 years consecutively, and so it's opened a ton of doors. So I think it's just that, it's just being unreasonable and just doing what most are willing to do.
And in your podcast is a DTC podcast. Why don't you talk about that a
DTC
little
Pod, yeah. DTC Pod started out when we started having a big gap between some of the customers that we had a trend where we might have had a small business that was a customer, and then we had like a mid-market, cool DTC brand that just knew how to use the content. They used the platform really well. And so SMBs were like, cool, I know I need this, but I don't know how to use the content, etc. And so we were like, well, I'm having these conversations with these brands that really get it. These cool companies might as well just record it and share that information with the SMBs. And so we started doing that, and that started working well. But then, one thing led to another. Then it just started opening doors to talk with other DTC founders. Then as it started growing and growing, we realized the potential it has for Trend to own its own distribution in a way, to not have to depend on ad traffic or anything like that. And then I met Blaine over at On Deck where I met Maria in Miami. Blaine had just exited from Seated, and he was building a company in the e-commerce space. He just moved to Miami as well, and we hit it off. And he's now been my co-host for half of the running time of the show, and he's just been a great addition. It's really, really taking off a lot more now.
So I'm kind of curious, since you're so in the thick of like the whole DTC space, and you're seeing sort of patterns of like usage from like companies using Trend, like what are people shifting to, since like there was this whole widespread talk about how Facebook and IG ads basically have no longer become financially viable for upstart D2C brands, right? Like, and not everybody is a good fit for TikTok or some of the other like up and coming channels. Like, so what are you seeing, like the shift? Where are people going? Like, how are they getting their, upstart brands off the ground?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest shift, which I guess is like a full U-turn, is brands going into retail, very, very, very heavily. And so some brands are even coming out full retail, abandoning DTC channels, supply chain, increasing ad costs, just makes those operations incredibly difficult for a lot of these companies. That's why, think that it's helped them, the rise of these sort of companies in the revenue-based financing and stuff, that has sort of helped them out with this. But what I've seen is retail, and then number two is figuring out a way to not buy traffic and create your traffic. And so TikTok falls into that bucket, which is organic, native content. And then, you can retarget those audiences, acquiring them for cheaper if you were to do ads. And then great content is evergreen. It's omni-channel. Like even good TikTok content, for example, you can use it if you were to retarget, or you use it on ads. And good creative makes your, higher ROAS, higher return on ad spend. And so, yeah, it's all just better content. And it sounds really biased because I have a content company, but it's sort of the shift that we saw happening. It's like, hey, why are you going to fully depend again on these third-party platforms? I come from experience where my company got shut down because of depending on a third-party platform. But when you own your own traffic and your own distribution, there's just no way of getting shut down.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting to me is sort of like the initial sort of allure of starting a D2C brand was originally like, cut out all the middlemen. I mean, look, Italic, which you mentioned, is like I'm a customer of theirs, and like one of their selling points is like there's 3 less parties involved in getting you the product, right? There's a handful of others that advertise it, like that's why it's a better value, because there's no distributors, there's no retailers, there's blah blah blah. It's direct, right? The whole point of direct to consumer. But now with the shift of like having to have a wholesale business for retail, having to have the distribution and all that stuff, it really does shift the economics a lot as far as how much it costs to get a brand off the ground, right? I don't think those days of setting up a skincare line for under $50,000 exist anymore. Do you?
Yeah, but Brian, one thing I'll say is it wasn't ever all that truly direct to consumer, right? Like the shelves were an Instagram algorithm, right? Like it was very much like you're super dependent on platforms, even if you're a DTC brand. And if there's one tweak to Facebook ads or how advertisers spend there, or a de-emphasis in certain type of content, on Instagram, like your business can take a significant hit the same way that, if it rains, you're going to have less foot traffic in, retail.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that makes you're 100% right on that, and I think it's also re-emphasizing the value of brand and also direct relationships with your customers, right? Because it's never been easier for a Alibaba manufacturer to knock you off, right? Like, I've seen Indiegogos and Kickstarters that the knockoff gets to market before the Kickstarter project, which is wild. Like, all of a sudden you're searching for something on Kickstarter and you see it on Amazon from a poorly written brand name, which, side note, I think there could be an incredible business in just teaching Chinese brands better English, for packaging and branding and things like that. But I don't know how you would sell to them.
No, don't do that. No, absolutely. I'm very, very against that. Let them fail.
So I think Brian's question is interesting. Of like, can you can you launch a brand these days with, say, less than $50,000? I think it depends on like how are you going to try and take it to market. And also what is your process for sourcing your suppliers? Like sourcing suppliers and co-packers, etc. It's still a business that operates, very grassroots, like calling, showing up. It's classic family businesses. They don't have a website. They don't care. And some of those businesses, you can, build a relationship and find someone that will say, all right, I'll do, 500 MOQs, like minimum order, for you. But that's just going to take a lot of time, relationship building, etc. And then from a distribution perspective, it's just the reason direct marketing is so expensive, like using ads or even sponsoring podcasts or whatever it is like DTC has evolved so much that now there's experts in every vertical. Like, it's not just the ad spend and your strategy there. It's like your landing page, it's your conversion rate optimization, it's your creative. In each one of these verticals, contractors, services are going to charge you a ton of money, which you can bypass if you have a really good organic TikTok strategy. There's a kid actually that lives in Miami, Taps Chocolate. They're just growing from TikTok only because they're not allowed. Is
that the sex chocolate thing?
Yeah, Oliver. Yeah, he was on the pod, and he's
Wait, what?
I think.
What is this?
Yeah, no, I don't know about
chocolate, a sex stimulating chocolate. He's like, I think 19 or something like that. They are absolutely crushing it. They're growing so fast, and it's all through TikTok. Not a single dollar in ad spend. But obviously that causes a lot of supply chain issues that they're having. But that's the best way that I see for a company to be able to grow. And then you have this new angle as well, of which is why you're seeing Shopify investing so much in creators. Like, well, what is another way to bypass this? Can I just work with somebody that already has all of this audience and distribution? You have companies like Fanjoy, Pietra Studio, that's a Founders Fund company, going after the Shopify creators, because it is a much easier and better way to, again, just not depend on these platforms. And creators aren't fully independent either. I think that's going to be the next shift as well, where creators don't, they have a big Instagram and everything, but they are still at the mercy of those third parties. Creators get their Instagram and TikTok accounts shut down as well. So even they are always looking to, how do I just like de-risk myself? They're starting YouTube channels, which still third party. I think the best way to do that is email newsletters or podcasts. Like, that's a distribution that they own more than, say, these third party platforms.
Yeah, like in many ways, social media definitely created this like democratization of access to distribution, right? Like, you didn't have to go pitch a network executive to,
Right.
get distribution, but it's still captured. I mean, these are massive tech companies that, are in it for the long haul. It's still captured all of the value, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're platform dependent, even though the kind of friction to get on that platform has never been lower. But if the American government shuts down TikTok, like, your business
Totally.
is over.
Totally. And I think the biggest the biggest value add that, these social platforms have brought to the advertising or marketing ecosystem is that, demographic targeting is pretty much old school. Like that was back in the day. What these social media platforms have brought to the table is that I can target people who like this and like that and like going there. And that is a lot more powerful saying than demographic, because you're touching an emotion on people in terms of like what their interests are, what I like, what communities do I feel like I belong to and engage with. And so influencers have that same thing. People follow influencers because they like the same things, they relate, they have communities. Yeah, I mean, it's a great, absolutely great growth strategy, but I think it's a better use to use influencers to help them build their brands or partner with them. It's a lot more organic than, say, the approach of influencer marketing that we were talking about in the beginning. Because yeah, it all goes to the same, back to the same thing, that it's not our data.
Are there any interesting brands that you've seen pop up from like social media native influencers? Not aside from like the Jenners and the Kardashians and stuff like that, right? Because they're building $1 billion brands and they're taking 20% of all social media dollars spent, something like that, right? But like, who's some like would Mr. Beast, I guess, be one, or like, or who are some other interesting brands that you've seen pop up from like an influencer as a way to monetize their traffic that's like 100% they've started it type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Beast has done it two times. So one with the Mr. Beast burger, they've already donated 100 million. They've already helped the
Crazy.
restaurants generate 100 million in transaction fees, or something like that through the burgers. And then they did Mr. Beast chocolate recently. We're actually interviewing one today on the pod, which is Sammy Clark from Form. It's, she's more around the 1 million to 3 million follower range. There's a creator who is actually doing really good, Savan. I'll have to find the name. She's just building back-to-back brands that are, Savan is her name. Savan Savan Ayla. If you look at her Instagram, it's Sivanayla. But she's just built a portfolio of brands that they're all just tailored to her community. That's why it's successful. They all complement one another. One is a skin product, the other one is a suntan product. So she's doing really well there. I mean, you had back in the day, obviously Jake Paul with like Maverick, who did really well. But yeah, I mean, and now, you have these platforms, as I mentioned, like Pietra and Fanjoy. You go on their websites, you see so many YouTubers. You know, Logan Paul with Prime. I mean, he's like everywhere with KSI.
The drink, is that the
Yeah, the
yeah.
drink. That thing is literally everywhere, in every Target, in every Walmart. Plus the distribution that they own, they're not sweating or stressed about, is my customer acquisition cost going to increase? So it just de-risks the business entirely.
That makes me curious. What are some of our favorite influencers and kind of more up and coming? So, Brian, does anyone come to mind?
Brian's a big TikTok guy. He scrolls at least 10% of his day.
Only 10%? Come on, it's probably like 25%. I consider it research for work, because my job entails knowing about the internet, for the last 20 something years. So,
And staying hip with the college kids.
right. If I don't understand their lingo, they just think of me as el viejo, who's out of touch. No, but I think it's curious, because like I bet you we each get targeted or like algorithmically pushed different people. Like I get a lot of randomly like home reno stuff, and now baby stuff because we have a kid. Whereas I bet you Caesar hasn't seen like baby skateboard shoes, which like my kid doesn't need them, but I
Nope.
feel like I have to buy them for some reason now.
Just wine.
One that I just started following, which I love, is actually I learned a South Florida woman. It's called Knuckle Bump Farms, and she has an emu that named Emmanuel who constantly just gets in the shot and knocks over the camera. But I
Oh,
guess
I've seen this one. I know
she
which one
was
you're
just
talking
on
about.
she was just on Jimmy Fallon, I think, last night.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out how I can get to that farm. It says it's close to the public, but that and like another one called Useless Farms. So if you know me, you know I'm obsessed with animals. So
Yeah,
basically all of my
seriously.
feed is just animals. But Useless Farm is also good. And I think she has an emu named Karen who tries to kill her all the time. But
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about all these is like the ones that become really big and successful. The one pattern you see is that most of them didn't start intentionally to become an influencer or anything like that. They just happened to do something that a lot of people found funny or really relate to or enjoy. Most of the people that go out on with the purpose of it's just not going to be as unique and as different. That's why Knuckle Buck Farms has grown so much, because it's something so different. If these creators go out and try to do sort of a different angle of something that already exists, it's not gonna to gain the virality.
yeah, it feels like more inauthentic.
Yeah, but that's how TikTok got so big, right? It basically put the content in front of people that are interested in that type of content rather than put the content you create in front of your friends and their friends, right? Like it was much more aligned on interest rather than like this social graph.
So I think that there's actually a slightly more nuanced dynamics, Caesar. I think what TikTok did was it put content first and not people first. So then like the For You page and all that stuff was about stuff you might find interesting, not people you might find interesting. So you might not see the same person 2 times, and I think 90% of their traffic is just the like random discovery process, right? But so my influencer that I am fascinated with is Miss Excel. And so Miss Excel is like this, I don't know, like redhead from Arizona or something like that, who does like Excel tutorials, like how to do pivot tables and VLOOKUP and all this nonsense. And I heard she makes $600,000 a month, like,
Wow.
and
That's
does it with
crazy.
her and her like husband or something like that. And it's not like her showing her butt or whatever it is, that is common with our local influencer crowd, but it's just her doing silly little dances and showing like a screen flow or a Loom video of how to do something in Excel.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit. This has been super fascinating, deep dive into marketing world. There's some news here in Miami this week. Pretty big kind of momentum setting news that Andreessen Horowitz is opening an office in Miami Beach. I thought that we needed a July splash, right? We had like, a couple months where it was a little quiet. People were a little depressed on, the plummeting value of crypto and, A16Z coming in hot with a Miami office. What are folks thinking about it? Ramon, you're nearby, right?
That was right after Trend's announcement of Miami Beach,
There you
so
go.
not a
They followed
coincidence.
you.
Yeah. No, I think that's really exciting. I think you're spot on. There's it's been a little bit quiet. Honestly, I've made the most out of the quiet time. Working as much as possible. I feel like there was also like a sprint of events
There
that,
was too many events. Let's call
yeah,
it what it is. There
there
was
was
like
a,
way too many parties. Sometimes I was at them. I was like, guys, like who's
yeah,
working? Like,
right, exactly. So, yeah, now it's the zap to wake back up again that Miami's not done growing.
Yeah, I have to say, I went to the happy hour this week, and I had heard that the one 2 weeks ago was a little bit calmer. So I was like, oh, great. I'll have a lot more one-on-one conversations, and it was madness. There's just still so many people moving here and looking to connect and find like-minded people. So it's exciting.
all right, this is all great startups are built by hard work, luck, but also timing. So me and Brian are going to start a company to fix the flooding in Miami Beach, and Andreessen Horowitz is going to fund it. Boom.
I
You
mean,
heard it
how
here
many
first.
billions do we need to raise for this startup? Like,
Not if you know how to do TikTok right.
Ooh,
Let's see. There you go. I don't know, man.
challenge.
I don't know. You can market your way out of flooding. I think
you just gotta raise enough money to lift every building off 10 feet up or something like that on stilts.
or pump water out. I mean, that's another way. Anyway, Ramon, thanks so much for joining the pod, man. This is an awesome conversation. Any last minute plugs that you want to drop here? Are you hiring? Drop the website.
Yeah, definitely. Hiring always for engineers or marketing, any sort of level of marketing from associate, recent college grads to experience people in, say, marketing and the performance side of things. Reach out to Ramon at trend.io in terms of like to keep up with us. Instagram at trend.creators. We always showcasing our creators and sort of the content being generated there. And then on LinkedIn, we're pretty active. And lastly, at the DTC Pod for interviews with other founders and on Instagram. And yeah, trend.io.
Awesome, man. Thanks for joining. We'll have a really cool episode coming up next week, and just appreciate everyone for tuning in every week, even the ones where we're a little too busy and tired to record. Really appreciate the love on Twitter and just this community being awesome.
No, thank you guys, and I'll see you around in Miami.
All right, man. Later.